The lilies were still fresh on Ryder's grave when Teresa cornered me in the foyer. Her Chanel perfume hit like antiseptic, burning my nose as she towered over me in her designer morning clothes. The prenup was very clear, dear. The house reverts to the family trust. Her voice carried the same artificial sweetness she'd used at the funeral. We'll need you out by Friday. My hands trembled. It's been 3 days. His clothes are still... I'll have the staff pack anything that's actually yours. She adjusted her pearl necklace, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times at family dinners. Though I suspect there isn't much. Ryder always did have a weakness for charity cases. I stood there, knees locked, throat tight. 5 years of marriage reduced to a dismissive wave of her manicured hand. The marble floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet as reality set in. I was being erased. Back in our bedroom, no, their bedroom now, I methodically filled boxes with the pieces of my life. Sophie's stuffed giraffe, my grad school textbooks, the framed photo from our honeymoon, before I understood what family I'd married into. Need any help? Dan appeared in the doorway, trying to look sympathetic, but barely hiding his smirk. The same expression he'd worn at board meetings when Ryder tried to question the company's numbers. I've got it. I shoved past him, carrying a box of books to my car. When I returned, Cynthia was rifling through my jewelry box. Just making sure nothing of Mother's accidentally got mixed in, she said without looking up. You understand? I did understand. I understood perfectly now. In the study, I grabbed Ryder's old philosophy books, the ones he'd actually read, unlike the leather-bound props Teresa insisted on displaying. As I pulled down his copy of Ethics, something clattered to the floor. The book had been hollowed out, and from its cavity spilled a small black ledger. My hands shook as I opened it. Pages of numbers, dates, names, transactions that made no sense for a legitimate business, entries in Ryder's precise handwriting, then older ones I recognized as Teresa's. Find something interesting? I jumped. Chelsea, the family lawyer, stood in the doorway. I shoved the ledger into my bag before she could see it. Just some old books, I said. Sentimental value. She nodded, but her eyes were sharp. Teresa asked me to remind you about the non-disclosure agreement you signed at the wedding. The family's privacy is still legally protected, even after recent events. Recent events. Like my husband's convenient heart attack at 42. Like the board meeting documents I wasn't supposed to see on his desk that night. Of course, I said. I wouldn't dream of causing trouble. Later, in my best friend Piper's guest room, I spread the ledger pages across the bed. 5 generations of carefully documented corruption. The legitimate business was just a front, bleeding money for years, while the real profits came from elsewhere. Everything finally made sense. The whispered conversations, the midnight meetings, the way Teresa controlled every aspect of her children's lives. Jesus, Piper whispered, reading over my shoulder. What are you going to do? Go to the police? I thought about Teresa's smug dismissal, Dan's smirk, Cynthia's casual cruelty, the way they'd all watched me cry at the funeral, dry-eyed and impatient. No, I said, touching the wedding ring I still wore. The police would bungle it, and the family would bury everything. They're too powerful for a direct attack. I picked up my phone and opened the browser. But I did learn a few things, being the perfect corporate wife, like the meaning of flowers. Did you know that lilies aren't just for funerals? They can also represent revenge. Piper's eyes widened as I continued searching. What exactly are you planning? I smiled, feeling the weight of grief crystallize into something harder, sharper. I'm going to send Teresa a lovely arrangement, something to help her remember me. The apartment complex smelled like stale cigarettes and broken dreams. I'd gone from a $10 million estate to a 1-bedroom walk-up in a week, but at least the rent was month to month. I wouldn't be here long. Unpacked boxes created a cardboard maze around my second-hand desk, The ledger lay open before me, its pages illuminated by my laptop's harsh glow. My eyes burned as I cross-referenced dates, accounts, shell companies. 5 years of business dinners and charity galas had taught me the language of wealth. Now I was learning its shadows. Look at this, I told Piper, pointing to an entry from 3 years ago. Regular transfers to numbered accounts in Zurich, always on the 15th, always in increments of exactly 249,999. Piper leaned over my shoulder, her florist apron still dusted with pollen, just under the reporting threshold. Teresa's handwriting. She's been doing this for decades. I traced the elegant script with my finger. The legitimate business hasn't turned a real profit since the 90s. It's all laundered money and cooking the books. And Ryder found out? I nodded, throat tight. The night he died, he was agitated. Said he had to talk to his mother about irregularities. Next morning, heart attack. Viv, Piper's voice was gentle. Are you saying... I'm not saying anything. Not yet. But Teresa's always been obsessed with control, and the company's her whole identity. I pulled up the website for Piper's flower shop. Show me the lilies again. She clicked through arrangements. White is traditional for funerals, but there's also spider lilies. Red, dramatic. In some cultures, they're associated with death and reincarnation. Perfect. I selected a dozen, arranged with dark foliage. And these need to go in a black vase. Can you do that? Of course. Piper hesitated. The card? I'd practiced this part for hours, channeling Teresa's own elegant script, thinking of you and our friends in Zurich. Memories are such delicate things. No signature needed. The message would land like a stiletto between the ribs, precise, personal, poisonous. Teresa would recognize the reference immediately. You sure about this? Piper asked, writing it down. Once we start... The snap of her scissors punctuated the question. I thought of Teresa's dismissive wave, of Dan's smirk, of Cynthia pawing through my belongings like I was already dead. I'm sure. I turned back to the ledger. They took everything from me. My husband, my home, my dignity. They thought I was nothing, just the quiet little wife who smiled at parties and never asked questions. But you were watching. I was learning. I traced another series of transactions, these ones involving offshore accounts in the Caymans. Teresa taught me more than she realized, about power, about patience, about making people destroy themselves. Piper's shop phone rang. She answered, then covered the mouthpiece. It's Cynthia. Wants to order arrangements for some charity thing. I smiled. Take the order. We want to keep things looking normal. After Piper left, I stayed up late, mapping the family's weaknesses, Dan's gambling debts, hidden from his mother, Cynthia's secret credit cards, the way Teresa kept them all dependent, dancing to her tune. My phone buzzed, an email from Chelsea, the family lawyer. Another reminder about the non-disclosure agreement. They were watching me, expecting the usual tactics. A lawsuit, a scandal, a desperate grab for money. They didn't understand what I'd learned in 5 years of perfect corporate wifehood. Power isn't about force, it's about pressure points, about knowing where to push, when to wait, how to make people unravel themselves. Tomorrow, Teresa would receive her flowers. She'd recognize the reference, but not the sender. She'd start wondering who else knew about Zurich, who else might talk. And that would be just the beginning. I closed the ledger and looked around my shabby apartment. Soon enough, Teresa would learn what it felt like to lose everything, one flower arrangement at a time. Sunday brunch at Le Petit Jardin was a Romero family tradition. Now I sat at the cafe across the street, nursing bitter instant coffee, watching through the window as my plan bloomed. Teresa arrived first, as always, but something was off. Her perfect posture had a brittle edge. She kept glancing at her phone, manicured fingers drumming the tablecloth. The lilies had arrived yesterday. Piper slid into the seat across from me. You should see the text Cynthia's been sending the shop. 3 separate orders for her charity luncheon, all canceled and reordered with different specifications. She's spiraling. Good. I sipped my coffee, grimacing at the artificial creamer. How's our next delivery coming along? The roses are ready. Blood red, just like you asked. Extra thorny. Through the window, I watched Dan arrive late, his designer suit slightly rumpled. Even from here, I could see the telltale signs of a hangover. He'd been gambling again. His Instagram had tagged him at the casino at 3 a.m. Cynthia swept in last, air kissing her mother's cheek. She pulled something from her purse, the card from Teresa's Lilies. The paper made a satisfying tearing sound as she unfolded it. I wish I could hear them, I murmured. Your lip reading's getting better, Piper observed. She was right. I'd learned to read Teresa's tight-lipped pronouncements years ago, a survival skill for family gatherings. Now I watched her mouth form familiar patterns. Handled. Discretion. Nothing to worry about. But her children weren't buying it. Dan's hand shook as he reached for his mimosa. Cynthia's Instagram-ready smile had slipped. My phone buzzed. A news alert for the family company. Their stock had dropped another 2 points this morning. Not enough to raise alarms, but the slow bleed had started. Time for phase 2, I said, showing Piper the delivery instructions I'd prepared for Dan's roses. The card would read, "Some debts can't be paid with money. Sweet dreams." He's going to freak, Piper said. You know he's been embezzling to cover his gambling losses? I nodded. Teresa's been covering for him, siphoning funds from other accounts. But now she'll wonder if he's talking to someone, if he made a deal to save himself. Through the window, I watched Teresa order for everyone, still controlling, still certain she could manage any threat. She didn't realize that control was her weakness. The tighter she gripped, the more likely her children were to crack. My phone buzzed again. Chelsea, the family lawyer, had viewed my LinkedIn profile. They were watching me, but they were watching the wrong threat. The quiet widow, licking her wounds in a cheap apartment, couldn't possibly understand their sophisticated financial crimes. If only they knew how many nights I'd spent listening to Ryder talk in his sleep, muttering about numbers that didn't add up. How many times I'd seen Teresa's mask slip when the wrong questions were asked at board meetings. Delivery scheduled for tomorrow morning, Piper confirmed. Dan's office, 9 a.m. sharp. Very public. Perfect. Dan had an investors meeting at 10. He'd be rattled, off balance, maybe desperate enough to make a mistake. And Teresa would be watching. Across the street, the brunch party was breaking up. Teresa's perfect smile had developed a tic. Cynthia was already on her phone, probably calling her secret boyfriend, the one Teresa would never approve of. Dan looked like he might be sick. I should go, I said, gathering my things. Need to be seen at the grocery store, buying sad single-person frozen dinners. Keep up appearances. Piper caught my arm. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I thought about it, watching Teresa slide into her Mercedes. Not enjoying, exactly, but there's a satisfaction in watching them tear themselves apart. They thought I was nothing, just the grieving widow, easily discarded. Their last mistake, I agreed, shouldering my knockoff handbag. See you tomorrow. I want to hear all about Dan's reaction to the roses. Through the window, I caught one final glimpse of Teresa's face. The great manipulator, finally feeling what it was like to lose control. By the time she figured out what was happening, it would be too late. The coffee might be bitter, but revenge was sweet. The shipping manifest glowed on my laptop screen. Look at this, I told Piper. Monthly deliveries of narcissus bulbs to the estate. Teresa's pride and joy. Those are toxic, you know. Piper leaned closer. The bulbs contain calcium oxalate crystals. One bite can cause severe... I remember. I touched my throat, recalling Teresa's lecture when I'd suggested planting wildflowers instead. Everything in her garden has to be just so. perfect. Poisonous. My phone buzzed. Chelsea was calling. Again. I let it go to voicemail, imagining her pristine office, her carefully arranged evidence board. 3 weeks of anonymous flowers had her working overtime, trying to protect the family's secrets. She interviewed me yesterday, Piper said, arranging stems in her workroom. Very thorough. Wanted records of all recent orders, especially anything unusual. What did you tell her? That we process dozens of orders daily, that people often request anonymity for romantic surprises. Piper's scissors snicked through a stem. She didn't look convinced. I checked my watch. Cynthia would be finishing her spa appointment soon. Her silver Mercedes would be sitting in the parking lot, top down despite the autumn chill. She always did prioritize style over sense. I need to run an errand, I said, selecting a single narcissus bloom from Piper's workbench. Keep your phone on? The spa's parking lot was nearly empty. Cynthia's car gleamed under the afternoon sun, unattended. The alarm chirped once as I approached. Her key fob was in range, probably in her purse inside the spa. I dropped the narcissus onto the driver's seat. The waxy white petals seemed to glow against the black leather, its sickly sweet fragrance already filling the enclosed space. When she drove home, that cloying scent would surround her, inescapable. My phone buzzed again. Chelsea's voicemail. Vivian, we need to discuss some concerns. The family is worried about potential breaches of confidentiality. Call me. I deleted it, watching through the spa's window as Cynthia emerged. She was texting, probably to her secret boyfriend, the one whose existence would devastate Teresa's carefully curated image of family unity. Cynthia reached her car, still distracted by her phone. She slid into the driver's seat, crushing the narcissus. The fragrance would be overwhelming now, triggering memories of Teresa's garden, of family secrets, of perfectly maintained appearances. My phone lit up with a text from Piper. Chelsea's here again, asking about narcissus shipments. Of course she was. The lawyer was good at her job, following threads, making connections, but she was looking in the wrong direction, searching for external threats when the rot was coming from within. I drove past the family estate on my way home. The gardens were immaculate as ever, narcissus bulbs waiting beneath the soil like buried secrets. A groundskeeper was pressure washing the driveway, erasing tire marks from Dan's latest late-night return. Another text from Piper. Teresa called, wants all future deliveries screened, says she's concerned about quality control. I smiled. Teresa was losing her grip, seeing threats in every shadow. Soon she'd start questioning her children's loyalty, tightening her control until something snapped. My apartment felt smaller than ever when I returned, but I barely noticed the water stains on the ceiling anymore. The ledger lay open on my desk, its pages filled with evidence of the family's corruption. But its real value wasn't in the numbers. It was in the patterns it revealed, the way Teresa manipulated everyone around her, the way money flowed like water, covering cracks, hiding decay. Chelsea called again as I was making dinner. This time, I answered. We should meet, she said, her lawyer's voice carefully neutral. Discuss some concerns. Of course, I said, matching her tone. I'm free tomorrow. The family's worried about you, Vivian. Living alone after such a loss? The threat was subtle, but clear. They were watching, evaluating, looking for signs of instability they could use against me. I'm coping, I said. The routine helps. Work, therapy, long drives in the country. Sometimes I even visit Ryder's grave and Teresa's precious garden, I didn't add, where narcissus bulbs waited like time bombs beneath the perfect lawn, ready to bloom into chaos. The smell of burnt toast seeped under my door as I listened to Teresa's voice through Piper's hidden microphone. My neighbor's chronic breakfast failures had become the soundtrack to my morning surveillance. Absolutely unacceptable, Teresa was saying, her controlled tone fraying at the edges. How did the SEC get these numbers? Internal leak, possibly. Chelsea's voice crackled through the earpiece. The discrepancies in the Q3 reports. Handle it. Teresa's heels clicked on marble. And find out who's behind these messages. Dan's becoming unreliable. I smiled, thinking of the wilted bouquet being delivered to Dan's office at this moment. Yellow roses, dried and brittle, with a card reading, Cayman account, 738, is looking rather wilted too. Time to come clean? My phone buzzed. Piper texting from her delivery van. Dan's secretary just called. He's refusing all flower deliveries now. Want me to leave them with reception? Perfect, I replied. More witnesses that way. Through the earpiece, I heard Chelsea shuffling papers. Teresa, these shell companies, the documentation isn't holding up. If the SEC digs deeper, they won't. But Teresa's voice had that brittle edge I remembered from charity galas when things weren't going her way. Where's Cynthia? She needs to sign these forms. She's not answering her phone. Because Cynthia was currently at a hotel with her secret boyfriend, according to her credit card statements. I'd anonymously forwarded the bill to Teresa's email last night. More burnt toast smell wafted in as I opened my laptop, checking the family company's stock price. Down another 3 points. The market was starting to notice the cracks in the Romero facade. Dan's been making withdrawals, Chelsea was saying. Large ones. If he's talking to the authorities, my son would never betray this family. But Teresa's voice shook slightly. Though perhaps we should adjust his access to the accounts. My burner phone lit up with a text from my source in the family's accounting department. Teresa just ordered an audit of all personal expenses. Kids are freaking out. Perfect. Dan's gambling debts would surface. Cynthia's secret credit cards. All the little sins Teresa had covered up for years, now under scrutiny. Through the earpiece, a door slammed. Dan's voice, tight with panic. Mother, we need to talk. These flowers, these messages. Someone knows. Lower your voice. Teresa's ice queen tone was back. Chelsea, give us the room. I heard Chelsea's heels click away, then Dan's breathing, fast and uneven. The Cayman account. If this gets out, it won't. Teresa's voice could have frozen hell. Unless someone's been talking. Have you been talking, Daniel? What? No. But Cynthia what? I saw her meeting with someone yesterday. A man in a suit. Could have been SEC. My lips curved. It had been Cynthia's boyfriend. But let them think whatever they wanted. Paranoia was doing my work for me. I'll handle your sister, Teresa said. But Daniel, if I find out you've been hiding anything. The threat hung in the air. I remembered that tone from family dinners, watched it make grown men flinch. Piper's voice came through my regular phone. Delivery confirmed. Dan's assistant said he turned white as a sheet when he saw the card. Started making calls immediately. Good. I checked the time. Ready for phase 2? White chrysanthemums for Cynthia? Already arranged. With the card about her special friend? Done. But Viv, Chelsea came by again this morning. She's asking very specific questions about flower meanings, traditional funeral arrangements versus other implications. Let her ask. I closed my laptop, stretching. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late. The family's already destroying itself. Through the earpiece, I heard Teresa making another call. Move everything from account 738. Now. And find Cynthia. I don't care what you have to do. My neighbor's smoke alarm started beeping, another breakfast casualty. But under that harsh sound, I heard something sweeter, the music of a powerful family spinning apart, petal by petal, secret by secret. Time to send Teresa today's arrangement, black dahlias, symbolizing betrayal, and a card asking about a certain private investigator she'd hired 30 years ago, right before her husband's convenient accident. Some flowers, after all, bloom best in darkness. The Wall Street Journal headline hit at dawn: Romero, Empire faces bankruptcy probe. I savored each word over my morning coffee, imagining Teresa's face as her carefully constructed world crumbled. Piper called at 8. You need to see this. The family's having an emergency meeting at the estate. Everyone's cars are here, even Chelsea's. I was already dressed. How's our special delivery looking? Black calla lilies, arranged exactly like you wanted. The card's perfect. I drove past the estate slowly, watching the security cameras track my movement. Let them see me. Let them wonder. Through the gates, I glimpsed Teresa in the garden, still wearing her silk robe, scrubbing her hands with that signature gardenia soap. Even from here, I could sense her desperation. My phone buzzed. A text from my source in accounting. Total meltdown. Teresa screaming at Dan about casino receipts. Cynthia crying in the bathroom. Chelsea looking sick. I parked at the coffee shop across the street, settling in to watch. The delivery van from Piper's shop arrived right on schedule. I held my breath as the guard accepted the arrangement. Black lilies rising from a bed of thorns. The card nestled like a viper among the blooms. Through my binoculars, I watched Teresa read it. Her signature gardenia scent couldn't mask the sour panic as she swayed, gripping the doorframe. The card's message was simple. Thinking of your late husband. Funny how history repeats. First his accident, now Ryder's heart attack. Sleep well. My burner phone lit up with a message from another source. SEC expanding investigation. Freeze on all accounts imminent. Perfect timing. I didn't need surveillance equipment to hear the shouting that started next. Teresa's voice carried across the lawn. What did you tell them, Daniel? Dan's response was lost, but Cynthia's wasn't. You're one to talk, Mother, after what you did to Daddy? Don't you dare! A crash of breaking glass. Security guards moving. Chelsea's BMW peeled out of the driveway, leaving black marks on Teresa's perfect pavement. My regular phone rang. Chelsea herself. I know it's you, she said without preamble. The flowers, the leaks, all of it. Prove it. I won't. I'm done. I've submitted my resignation and contacted the ethics board. She paused. You should know, Teresa's desperate. She's talking about handling the situation, like she handled her husband, like Ryder. Thanks for the warning. I watched another security team arrive at the gates. Jumping ship? I'm not going down with them. Neither should you. Be careful. The line went dead as more shouting erupted from the estate. Dan stormed out, his perfect suit wrinkled, face red. Cynthia followed, mascara streaking her cheeks. You killed him. Cynthia's voice carried clearly now. You killed Daddy and now Ryder. Get out! Teresa's scream was primal. All of you, get out! My source texted again. Teresa trying to access offshore accounts. All frozen. Dan calling known gambling contacts. Cynthia's boyfriend leaked photos to TMZ. I opened the TMZ link. Cynthia in compromising positions with a man who was definitely not approved by the family. The comments were already flooding in, connecting it to the bankruptcy story. Another text from Piper. Chelsea just called, turned over all her files to the SEC. It's happening. Yes, it was. Years of corruption unraveling in hours. A dynasty drowning in its own poison. Through my binoculars, I watched Teresa standing alone in her perfect garden, surrounded by her precious flowers. She was still clutching my card, her gardenia soap abandoned on the steps. The security teams were leaving, probably hadn't been paid. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from an unknown number. I know what you did to my father and Ryder. The police will too. Cynthia, showing unexpected spine. Good for her. I started my car, taking one last look at the estate. Teresa had fallen to her knees among her flowers, the black lilies scattered around her like omens. The gardenia scent wouldn't save her now. Nothing would. "Sweet dreams, Teresa," I whispered, pulling away. "Say hello to Ryder for me." In my rearview mirror, I watched the gates close on the wilting empire. By tomorrow, the SEC would have everything. The police would have their suspicions. And Teresa would finally understand what it meant to lose everything. Some flowers, after all, are meant for funerals. The catering uniform itched, but it was worth it to watch Teresa's world end in person. I moved through the gala crowd with my tray of champagne, invisible as always. The annual Romero Foundation benefit, Teresa's crown jewel of social dominance, was about to become her final performance. "Stock in free fall," a board member muttered nearby, "SEC crawling through everything." I offered him champagne. He took it without seeing me, just like he'd never really seen me at dozens of previous galas. The bubbles fizzed sharply against my tongue as I stole a sip between rounds. Teresa held court near the fountain, her designer gown pristine, her smile fixed, but her fingers kept touching her pearls, her tell when things were spinning out of control. "Where's Dan?" someone asked too loudly. "Thought the whole family would be here." Last I'd heard, Dan was trying to flee the country. His passport had been mysteriously flagged. Cynthia arrived late, wearing red, a deliberate slight to Teresa's prescribed dress code. Her boyfriend followed, no longer a secret, his presence a declaration of war. "Mother," Cynthia's voice carried, "so glad you could tear yourself away from the SEC interviews." The string quartet hit a sour note. Conversation stuttered. I circulated with fresh champagne, catching snippets. Bankruptcy protection. Criminal investigation. Teresa's husband years ago, remember how the air felt thick with expensive perfume and impending disaster. Teresa's carefully curated roses lined the walls, their sweetness cloying, funereal. Chelsea arrived next, wearing prosecution witness white. She headed straight for the board members, manila envelope in hand. Teresa's pearls clicked faster. "Ladies and gentlemen," Teresa tapped her glass, desperate to regain control. "Thank you all for supporting our charitable—" "What charity?" Cynthia's voice sliced through the polite murmur. "The one you used to launder money? Or the one that got Daddy killed?" Crystal shattered. Someone had dropped their glass. The string quartet stopped entirely. "Cynthia, dear," Teresa's smile was murderous, "you're overwrought. Perhaps you should tell them about the Cayman accounts, Mother." Cynthia's mascara was perfect tonight, her rage cold and controlled. "Tell them what really happened to Daddy when he threatened to expose you. Tell them about Ryder." I moved closer with my tray, invisible in my uniform. The champagne's fizz matched my pulse. "Security," Teresa called, but no one moved. They couldn't afford security anymore. "The SEC has everything," Chelsea's voice rang out. "The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the private investigators' report from 30 years ago, your late husband's real autopsy results." More glasses shattered. Someone knocked over a vase of roses, their perfume mixing with spilled wine. "You're all complicit," Teresa's composure finally cracked. "Every one of you benefited. The board, the investors. We trusted you." The board chairman's face was ashen. Our reputations, our investments. Mother had us all fooled. Dan's voice? He'd arrived after all, looking haunted. Even Ryder, until the night he found the proof. The room erupted. Accusations flew like arrows. My retirement fund. Criminal conspiracy. Knew about her husband's murder. I watched Teresa's face as it all unraveled. Her perfect mask crumbling. Her power evaporating like champagne bubbles. She looked around wildly, searching for allies. Finding none. "You." Her eyes locked on Cynthia. "You ungrateful—" "The police are outside," Cynthia said quietly. They have some questions about Ryder's autopsy. Teresa ran. Actually ran, designer heels clicking desperately across marble floors. But the police were indeed waiting. I heard the commotion in the foyer, the official voices, the reading of rights. The gala dissolved into chaos. Board members called their lawyers. Investors fled. Cynthia sobbed in her boyfriend's arms, while Dan drained a bottle of $100 wine straight from the neck. No one noticed the catering server slipping away. No one connected the quiet widow to the dynasty's destruction. I was invisible right to the end. Teresa's final blind spot. Outside, police lights painted the roses red and blue. I removed my server's bow tie, listening to Teresa's empire crash down in a symphony of sirens and recriminations. The champagne's fizz still lingered on my tongue, sharp and victorious. Some flowers bloom best in blood. Dawn mist clung to the estate's lawns as I slipped through the unmanned gates. 3 months since Teresa's arrest, and already neglect had crept in. Weeds pushed through the gravel drive. Dead leaves gathered in corners. Nature reclaiming what artifice had stolen. The grass was cold and wet between my bare toes as I crossed the garden. Teresa's precious flowers drooped without their daily maintenance. Only the lilies still stood tall, hardy survivors like me. My old key still worked. The house echoed, stripped of artwork and antiques by federal agents. Dust sheets draped the furniture like funeral shrouds. In the foyer, Teresa's favorite mirror reflected my ghost-pale face, transformed by victory and vindication. The morning paper lay unopened on the steps, delivered by habit to an empty house. I didn't need to read it. I knew the headlines by heart. Teresa, denied bail, facing murder charges for 2 husbands. Dan, plea bargaining, turning state's evidence. Cynthia, immunity deal, writing a tell-all memoir. The company, bankrupt, assets frozen, empire crumbled to dust. I wandered room by room, remembering. The study where I'd found Ryder's ledger, the dining room where Teresa had hosted her power dinners, the kitchen where I'd played the perfect corporate wife, serving coffee while they plotted their crimes. My phone buzzed, Piper checking in. You okay? Better than okay. I touched the wall where family photos once hung. Just saying goodbye. The real estate agent called. Offers are coming in for the estate. Of course they were. Prime property, priced to sell by the federal government. Some other family would live here, unknowing, unseeing. Would they feel the echoes of destruction in these walls? Would they notice how the lilies bloomed blood red every spring? Upstairs, my old bedroom stood empty except for the bed where Ryder died. Heart attack, they'd said. Natural causes. But Teresa's perfectly timed midnight tea had contained more than chamomile. I kept my promise, I whispered to his absence. They'll never hurt anyone else. The morning light strengthened as I descended, casting long shadows across marble floors. In Teresa's office, her prized garden books lay abandoned. I opened one, finding pressed flowers between the pages. Evidence of her obsession with perfection, with control. My revenge had been prettier than hers, more elegant. A symphony of flowers and fear, of secrets blooming in darkness. No violence needed, just pressure in the right places, watching them tear themselves apart. The doorbell's chime startled me. Through the security feed, I saw Chelsea on the steps, looking professional despite everything. She'd landed on her feet, turned witness for the prosecution. Smart woman. I slipped out the back as she waited, leaving a single lily on the doorstep. Let her wonder, let them all wonder, in their separate cells and witness protection programs. The quiet widow had vanished, leaving only flowers in her wake. My new life waited. A small publishing house in another city, bought with Teresa's hidden millions. Poetic justice, using their crimes to fund my freedom. The advance copies of my first acquisition sat in my car. Cynthia's memoir, every dark secret laid bare. The garden dew had dried as I crossed back to the gate. A moving truck rumbled past, forensics team still cataloging evidence. They'd be at it for months, unraveling decades of corruption. My footprints would dry in the grass, leaving no trace of my final visit. My phone buzzed again. A news alert. Teresa's lawyer quitting, citing irreconcilable differences. Another rat fleeing the sinking ship. I plucked one last lily before leaving, its petals cool against my fingers. In the language of flowers, white lilies mean purity, rebirth, but they also mean death. The death of an old life, the birth of something new. The estate disappeared in my rearview mirror, shrouded in morning mist. But the lily's scent lingered, sweet and sharp like victory. Let it haunt them in their separate prisons. Let them wonder, in their sleepless nights, how the quiet widow brought down an empire. Some ghosts wear flowers, some revenge bloom slow and beautiful, fed by tears and watered with justice. I drove away, leaving only lilies behind.